Diana, your husband isn't coming home. We found him with another woman, and she's pregnant. Her heart stops. 7 months pregnant, Diana races against time, uncovering betrayal, lies, and a secret that could destroy everything. Every decision she makes now will change her life forever. Will she confront him, or tear her world apart first? One man ruined her trust, another will fight to heal it. Secrets, lies, heartbreak, and a love she never expected. Watch as Diana rises from betrayal to reclaim her life. I'm so glad you're here. Tell me, where are you listening from today? Make sure you stay tuned till the very end, because this story will take you on a roller coaster of betrayal, heartbreak, and unexpected love. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our family so you never miss a story. All right, let's dive in. The phone rang sharply, slicing through the quiet hum of Diana's apartment, and her heart skipped a beat before fear could fully take hold. She glanced at the screen, frowning at the unfamiliar number, her intuition tightening like a vice in her chest. 7 months pregnant, her body already carrying the weight of a life she had nurtured and protected, she answered with a tentative, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was calm yet edged with urgency, and it was the kind of calm that always made her stomach twist. "Mrs. Diana Wallace?" the officer asked, his tone professional but carrying an undertone that made her nerves spike. "Yes," she replied, trying to steady her voice, though the subtle tremor betrayed her growing apprehension. "This is Officer Hayes from the Central Precinct. We have an urgent matter regarding your husband, Willie. He has been found unconscious at a hotel with another woman." Diana's hand flew to her mouth, the blood draining from her face as her mind refused to grasp the words. Her breathing hitched, shallow and rapid, each exhale rattling against the tight walls of panic forming in her chest. She clutched the countertop for support, feeling the life inside her kick sharply, almost as if sensing the shock rippling through her. What do you mean?" she managed to whisper, her voice barely audible over the thundering of her own heart. The officer continued, his words deliberate and precise, each one another hammer striking her composure. "We received a call from the hotel staff. They found your husband, intoxicated and unconscious, in a compromising situation with a woman. Medical attention was required immediately, and he's currently under observation at the hospital." Diana's legs threatened to buckle, her knees weakening as if they had been suddenly drained of all strength. Her fingers trembled, curling against the edge of the countertop, leaving pale impressions on the polished surface. A wave of nausea rolled over her, not from the pregnancy, but from the surreal horror of the revelation. She felt as though her world had been ripped apart in a single jagged moment. Her thoughts raced uncontrollably. How? Why? When did this happen? Panic clawed at her throat, constricting it, making it almost impossible to speak. I need to come," she said finally, her voice steadier than she expected, though every syllable felt like carrying a stone. "Yes, Mrs. Wallace. Please come to the precinct immediately," the officer replied. "We need to speak with you in person." Diana hung up the phone and pressed her hand against her belly, feeling the child within kick again, almost defiantly, as though trying to anchor her to reality while the rest of her life unraveled. She grabbed her coat and keys with trembling hands, the world around her moving in a blur as adrenaline surged. Each step to the car was heavy with dread, every moment stretching into eternity, her mind replaying endless worst-case scenarios. Her car ride to the station felt like a suspended nightmare, the traffic lights flickering past like taunting reminders of how little control she had. Every honk, every screech of tires seemed amplified, pounding against her ears and against her frayed nerves. She reached the precinct, breathless, and the sterile smell of antiseptic and paper hit her like a slap. The receptionist looked up, eyebrows raised, but before she could ask a question, an officer emerged from the side corridor, motioning for her to follow. Diana's heart thudded violently in her chest, a relentless drum of panic and anticipation as she followed him down the dimly lit hallway toward a private interrogation room. The door creaked ominously as it opened, revealing the cold fluorescent lighting and the officer waiting inside, a tablet in his hand displaying footage. Her stomach dropped, twisting in knots, and she gripped her coat tighter, the fabric crumpling under her fingers as she approached. This is necessary," Officer Hayes said softly, almost hesitantly, as if bracing for the blow. Diana nodded, swallowing hard, feeling her throat tighten. The footage played. Willie appeared on the screen, unsteady and flushed, laughing recklessly with a woman she didn't recognize at first. She froze, unable to move, as every detail sank in. The hotel room, the careless manner in which he held the other woman, the unmistakable closeness, the laughter that cut through her heart like jagged glass. And then came the revelation that made her knees nearly buckle. The woman. She was pregnant too. Diana's chest constricted, a cold, sharp pain settling deep inside her, leaving her gasping, clutching her abdomen as though her grip could protect herself and her unborn child from the storm of betrayal unraveling before her. Her mind reeled, alternating between disbelief and fury, images colliding in a chaotic frenzy. Willie, the promises, the shared plans, now tainted by deception so intimate it felt like an assault on every memory she held dear. Her hands shook, trembling at her sides, but she forced herself to straighten, drawing in a ragged breath as her fingers dug into the chair. Her eyes fixed on the screen, a mixture of horror and determination fighting for dominance inside her. The officer leaned closer, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "He asked for you," he murmured, each word dropping like a stone into the churning waters of her mind. "He thinks you'll forgive him." Diana's gaze snapped to him, shock mingling with disbelief. Her stomach felt hollow, a pit of fire spreading through her chest, the weight of betrayal pressed down, heavy and suffocating. Yet beneath it, a strange clarity began to form. She couldn't crumble. Not now, not ever. She had a life to protect, a child to shield, and a dignity she would not surrender to the recklessness of another. Her mind raced with possibilities, scenarios spinning wildly, yet one truth crystallized in the chaos. Everything had changed, irreversibly, in a single night. Her breaths were shallow, quick, but she forced herself to count each one, to steady the rising panic threatening to overtake her. She imagined the conversation she might have with Willie, the confrontation that loomed like a storm on the horizon, but each thought only made her chest tighten further. She felt the baby kick sharply again, as if sensing the tension, reminding her of the responsibility she carried, the life that depended on her composure. Her hands pressed to her belly instinctively, seeking reassurance, grounding herself in that fragile connection. The officer, sensing the storm within her, gently placed a hand on the table, and his eyes met hers, steady, patient, but aware of the tumult raging inside. Diana felt a flicker of anger ignite. How could he have done this? How could Willie, the man who had vowed loyalty, trust and protection, betray her so profoundly? Her mind conjured every shared memory, every tender moment, every whispered promise, all tainted now, all standing in sharp, cruel contrast to the images on the screen. The rage coiled within her, a serpent ready to strike, yet she suppressed it, harnessing the energy into icy, focused determination. She would not allow this to break her, not here, not now. She would rise from this betrayal, stronger, more resolute, and she would demand accountability, clarity, and justice. Each thought sharpened her focus, her fingers digging into the edge of the chair, her knuckles whitening as she steadied herself. Her eyes flicked back to the screen, studying Willie's drunken, reckless expression, searing it into memory. She noticed details she hadn't before, the way his hand lingered on the woman, the slurred words of apology he never actually voiced, the careless laughter echoing in the cold hotel room. And then a realization struck, slicing through the haze of shock. She had been blindsided, yes, but she had not been powerless. She could act. She could reclaim her dignity, her control, and her life. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a chaotic symphony of fear, anger, and burgeoning resolve. A single thought anchored her in the moment. She had a choice: confront him or step away from the nightmare unfolding. Each option carried risk, each path fraught with uncertainty. She felt the weight of decision pressing down on her, heavier than any physical burden she had ever known. The baby shifted again, a reminder of the stakes, a living symbol of the future she had to protect. Diana drew in a long, trembling breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions, to tame the storm raging inside her. Her eyes met the officer's again, and she saw both caution and sympathy reflected there. He leaned closer once more, and she could feel the quiet gravity of his words hanging in the room. "Think carefully, Diana. What you do next will define everything." She nodded slowly, the seed of resolve taking root, and for the first time since the call, she felt a flicker of control. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, yet in that suffocating tension, a plan began to form. The betrayal had shattered her world, but it had also sharpened her mind, honed her instincts, and awakened a clarity she hadn't known she possessed. Diana's eyes narrowed, a quiet fire igniting behind them, reflecting the storm within. She would not be a victim of Willie's recklessness. She would face the consequences, confront the truth, and emerge unbroken for herself and her unborn child. And yet, as she stepped back from the screen, her hand still pressed to her belly, a flicker of doubt threatened to creep in. Could she truly face him? Could she confront the man she had loved so fiercely, now exposed in such devastating betrayal? Or would the fear of what she might find push her away, toward escape, toward avoidance, toward silence? Her chest tightened, heart racing, mind a storm of possibilities, and the room seemed to pulse with the weight of the choice. The phone call, the footage, the revelations, all converged into a single sharp point of decision. Diana's fingers trembled, her breath caught in her throat, and she felt the first true moment of empowerment amid the chaos. She could choose her path. She could reclaim her life. Yet the question lingered, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. Would she face Willie, the man who had shattered her world, or would she run from the nightmare unfolding before her, letting fear dictate the first step of a journey she could not yet fully see? The hospital corridor stretched ahead like a tunnel of tension, its sterile white walls reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights that made Diana's chest tighten with every step. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, a steady metronome in the chaos storming within her mind, each echo marking the heartbeat of a woman determined not to break. Every step closer to Willie's room was heavier than the last, her resolve a tight coil of fire and ice, unyielding and sharp. The weight of betrayal pressed down on her shoulders, yet she moved forward with calm intensity, her hand instinctively brushing the swelling of her abdomen as if to remind herself of the life she must protect. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair, a stark contrast to the storm that roared in her mind. She passed nurses and visitors whose casual conversations barely registered, their laughter distant, almost mocking, as if the universe itself had conspired to amplify her pain. As she approached the room, she paused for a breath, inhaling the sterile air, tasting it like metallic ash, and she allowed herself a moment to steel her nerves. The door to Willie's room loomed ahead, a barrier she had to cross, a threshold between the life she thought she knew and the reality she had been thrust into. Her hand hovered over the handle, her fingers trembling imperceptibly, a subtle crack in the armor she had built. She drew in a deep breath, forcing her mind to sharpen, to focus on the purpose that had brought her here: clarity, justice, and reclaiming control. With a deliberate movement, she turned the knob and entered, her presence commanding, almost tangible, like the weight of a storm that cannot be ignored. Willie lay on the hospital bed, pale and dishevelled, a bandage pressed against the side of his temple, his clothes rumpled from the night's chaos. His eyes widened at the sight of her, a mixture of shock, guilt, and desperation flickering across his face. "Diana," he began, his voice hoarse, laced with excuses and half-formed apologies. He gestured weakly, as though to reach for her, but Diana's gaze hardened into a look of steel, unflinching, unyielding. Every syllable of explanation that tried to crawl past his lips was swallowed by the weight of her silent judgment. She did not move, did not falter, and the air between them thickened with unspoken words and unresolved fury. Willie's hand lifted slowly, hesitant, as if reaching for a lifeline, but Diana instinctively stepped back, the movement sharp, deliberate, and unmistakable. The distance she created spoke louder than any words he could muster. She was no longer the forgiving wife who would turn a blind eye to betrayal. Her eyes locked onto his, icy and unwavering, and for the first time, Willie felt the full force of the consequences he had set in motion. He swallowed, panic flickering in his expression, and tried to form words again, but they faltered, collapsing under the weight of her gaze. Detective Radin stood quietly at the side, arms crossed, his presence steady and unobtrusive, yet Diana felt the protective aura radiating from him. He watched intently, noting her control, her composure, and the strategic clarity with which she assessed the scene. His admiration was quiet, almost imperceptible, yet it added a subtle layer of strength to the room, a reminder that she was not entirely alone in facing the fallout. Diana's mind, though reeling with emotion, began to sort through the facts with meticulous precision. She listened as Radin detailed Willie's legal violations, outlining the reckless endangerment, the public misconduct, and the sheer audacity of his betrayal. Each detail struck her like a calculated blow, yet instead of breaking her, it sharpened her focus. The betrayal was not merely emotional. It was a systemic pattern of deception and irresponsibility, and she intended to dismantle it with precision. As the officer spoke, Diana's eyes drifted to the hospital window, the night beyond cloaking the city in shadows, and she imagined the life she could reclaim, the assets she could secure, the future she could protect for her unborn child. The thought steadied her, infused her with a cold clarity, transforming the raw pain into strategic determination. Willie, sensing her growing distance and resolve, attempted to plead, his voice trembling, words tumbling out in a desperate cascade. "Diana, please, you don't understand. It was a mistake. I didn't mean—" But Diana cut him off with a subtle lift of her hand, a gesture so simple yet so powerful that it silenced him instantly. She did not need to speak. Her body, her gaze, and the deliberate calm of her presence communicated a message clearer than any words. She was unmoved, unyielding, resolute. Every plea he made, every excuse he offered, was absorbed and evaluated, catalogued in her mind, yet none could pierce the armor she had forged from heartbreak, instinct, and resolve. She began mentally mapping her next steps, envisioning the divorce proceedings, the reclamation of shared assets, and the meticulous protection of her child's future. Each scenario played out in her mind with precision, the strategy forming like a chessboard, where she controlled every piece, anticipating moves, countermoves, and potential traps. Willie's panic escalated, the desperation evident in the tremor of his hands, the pleading in his eyes, the raw edge in his voice. Yet Diana remained unmoved, a pillar of calculated composure, her every breath measured, her every movement deliberate. Raiden observed quietly, recognizing the transformation in her posture, the subtle tightening of her jaw, the calm intensity in her eyes. She had shifted from victim to strategist, from despair to determination, and the room itself seemed to respond, contracting around her controlled presence. Diana's thoughts flickered briefly to the baby, the small life moving inside her, a reminder of the stakes that could not be compromised. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, feeling the gentle kick as a silent affirmation that she would survive, she would protect, and she would rise. Willie attempted once more, his words fragmented, as if the act of speaking itself had become impossible under the weight of her gaze. "Diana, I never wanted to hurt you. It's not what it looks like." She turned slightly, a faint, cold smile tugging at the corner of her lips, a subtle acknowledgement that she had already understood everything, and yet she remained composed, unwavering. The room pulsed with tension, every heartbeat a drum of anticipation, every pause a suspended second in which the trajectory of their lives hung precariously. Diana's mind catalogued evidence, potential witnesses, and the leverage she now held, each thought fortifying her resolve. Raiden leaned closer, a silent ally, his presence reinforcing her confidence without a single word. Yet he sensed she was on the verge of a decision, the delicate precipice between confrontation and forward motion, and he chose to wait, knowing that any interference would be premature. The quiet hum of medical equipment, the distant footsteps of nurses, and the muted city sounds outside the window became a backdrop to the intense mental choreography unfolding in Diana's mind. She imagined the upcoming negotiations, the courtroom, the strategic moves she would execute with precision, each designed to secure her autonomy and protect her child. Willie, growing increasingly frantic, reached a trembling hand toward her, but Diana sidestepped instinctively, her movement fluid, precise, deliberate. The gesture carried no threat, yet communicated more than words ever could. She had drawn a boundary that would not be crossed. Each second stretched, heavy with the weight of consequence, and yet Diana's pulse remained steady, her mind sharp, her emotional control absolute. She considered the betrayal, the duplicity, the lies that had led to this moment, and transformed each thought into a blueprint for reclaiming her life. Raiden, recognizing the clarity of her strategic mind, allowed a subtle nod of approval, a quiet acknowledgement that Diana had transitioned from survivor to tactician. Willie's eyes flickered between panic, disbelief, and dawning comprehension, finally understanding that this was not a woman to be manipulated or forgiven lightly. Diana's fingers tightened slightly on her coat, a tactile reminder of the resolve coiling within her, a silent promise that she would act with precision, not impulse. She began to map every possible outcome, anticipating Willie's reactions, identifying weaknesses, and ensuring that every step forward would protect her and her unborn child from further harm. The room seemed to shrink around her, the air thick with tension, anticipation, and the unspoken potential for confrontation. Each breath she drew was a deliberate act of control, each blink a calculation, each subtle movement a message to Willie that she was no longer the woman he could take for granted. She shifted her weight slightly, feeling the life inside her respond, kicking sharply as if to remind her of the stakes at hand. Her mind, though focused on strategy, could not ignore the raw pain beneath the surface, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the devastation, yet she harnessed it, transforming it into fuel for the meticulous plan forming in her mind. Willie attempted to speak again, but Diana held up a hand, silencing him with a look that brooked no argument. The words he would have spoken remained trapped in the air, fragments of desperation dissolving into the charged atmosphere of the room. Her gaze flicked to Raiden, who stood slightly back, observant yet deferential, a quiet anchor in the storm. He had seen her pain, her fury, and her strength, and he knew that whatever she chose next would be decisive, irrevocable, and precise. Diana turned her attention back to Willie, measuring the emotional distance between them, analyzing every twitch, every flinch, every micro-expression that betrayed the fear now coursing through him. She considered the potential impact of her actions, the legal ramifications, the moral imperatives, and the protection of the life she carried. The hospital room felt suspended in time, a crucible of decision-making, betrayal, and emerging empowerment. The air seemed to pulse with anticipation, every second stretching into an eternity, each heartbeat a marker of the choices yet to be made. Finally, Diana exhaled slowly, deliberately, letting the air carry away the last vestiges of shock, leaving clarity in its place. She took a step toward the door, her movement measured and unwavering, signaling her readiness to step into a new life, to claim her power, and to enforce the boundaries that Willie had shattered. But just as her hand touched the door handle, Raiden's voice broke the tense silence, low and deliberate, carrying a weight that froze her in place. "Diana, there's something else you need to know about that woman." Her pulse quickened, a fresh spike of tension and anticipation coursing through her. The air seemed to thrum, charged with the promise of yet another revelation, another twist in the night that had already changed everything. Diana's eyes met Raiden's, the subtle flicker of uncertainty and warning mirrored in his gaze. The threshold she had reached now felt like a precipice, and the decision she faced seemed more complex than ever. The room's quiet hum, Willie's panicked whispers, and the life moving inside her combined into a taut moment, suspended between revelation and action. A new layer of betrayal loomed, unspoken yet palpable, threatening to upend the fragile control she had so carefully established. The tension coiled in her chest, the weight of anticipation pressing down as the first real test of strategy, patience, and emotional fortitude presented itself. Diana's hand remained poised on the handle, frozen between stepping forward into the next phase of confrontation and retreating to gather further insight, the decision slicing through her mind like a blade. The night had already shattered her world, yet in this suspended, charged moment, it seemed poised to fracture it further. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every fiber of determination demanded she move forward. The revelation dangling on the edge of Raiden's words promised yet another twist, another challenge to her resolve, and a renewed test of the control, clarity, and power she had begun to reclaim. The office door clicked shut behind them, sealing Diana and Raiden in a space that seemed both secure and suffocating, a quiet chamber that held the weight of revelations yet to unfold. The sterile room smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the scent somehow grounding amidst the storm of thoughts racing through Diana's mind. She pressed her hand instinctively to her abdomen, feeling the subtle movement of her child, a gentle reminder of what she needed to protect, what stakes remained higher than her own heartbreak. Raiden gestured for her to sit, but Diana remained standing, her posture straight, shoulders squared, eyes sharp, radiating a calm intensity that both intimidated and fascinated. "Diana," Raiden began carefully, his voice steady, measured, yet with a trace of hesitation that told her this revelation would cut deep. "There's more to this situation than you've seen so far." Her gaze narrowed, every nerve alert, every instinct bristling as though preparing for battle. She had faced betrayal already, had stared into the abyss of deceit. Yet something about the weight in Raiden's tone made her pulse quicken, anticipation mingling with dread. "Explain," she said simply, her voice calm but steel-edged, betraying nothing of the storm she felt within. Raiden nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of her readiness, and began to unfold the story. The woman with Willie. This was not a fling, Diana. It was not a momentary lapse. This was a long-term arrangement. Months. She was funded with your own money, without your knowledge. Every lavish expense, every hotel, every hidden transfer, all came from your accounts. The words struck her like a physical blow, an invisible fist colliding with her chest, sending shockwaves through her body. Her breath hitched, and she instinctively gripped the edge of the table, forcing herself to draw in slow, controlled breaths, each one a battle, against the nausea and disbelief that threatened to overwhelm her. Her mind whirled, spinning through the implications, the lies, the calculated audacity of Willie's betrayal. She had been blind, yes, but now clarity sharpened every thought, every plan, every potential response. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment the room was silent except for the subtle hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint shuffle of papers in Raiden's hands. Diana's eyes flicked to him, demanding details, answers, proof, evidence, anything that would help her dismantle the web of deceit that had been spun around her life. "I want everything," she said finally, voice calm but commanding, every syllable deliberate. "Every transaction, every signature, every document that connects him to this scheme. I need to know the full scope. No omissions, no excuses." Raiden's brow lifted slightly, impressed by her composure, by the strategic precision hidden beneath her calm exterior. He could see the storm raging behind her eyes, the hurt, the fury, yet it was controlled, harnessed, channeled into something formidable. "Diana," he said, "this is going to be difficult. Some of the evidence, it's ugly, it's worse than you can imagine." She did not flinch. Her stomach tightened as another kick reminded her of the life she carried, a life she would protect at any cost. "Ugly doesn't scare me," she replied, voice steady, betraying nothing. "It fuels me." Raiden handed her a thick folder, the weight of it heavy in her hands, symbolic of the truth she had demanded. She flipped it open, scanning the first pages, noting the hidden transfers, the hotel invoices, the restaurant bills, the extravagant gifts, all paid without her knowledge. Each line of numbers, each signature, each timestamp was a dagger, a revelation of the months of duplicity she had endured without realizing. Her jaw tightened as clarity solidified within her mind. She had not been replaced overnight. She had been systematically deceived, manipulated, exploited. The humiliation of the truth tried to rise like a tide, threatening to pull her under, but she met it with icy precision, transforming it into resolve, into strategy. "He planned this," she whispered, almost to herself, the words sharp, precise, every detail, every lie, every single moment of it calculated. Raiden nodded, silent, letting her process, knowing she needed the moment to absorb the full scale of betrayal. Diana's eyes narrowed on a particular line, a transfer labeled for the woman's medical expenses, clearly connected to her pregnancy. Her hand tightened around the folder, knuckles whitening, and she allowed herself a flicker of anger, a controlled flare of fire. The fact that this woman carried another life, just as she did, and that Willie had hidden this so meticulously, fanned the flames of both fury and determination. She leaned back slightly, letting the chair support her, and her mind began the meticulous work of planning. Legal avenues, financial leverage, personal protection, every step needs precision. She would not allow emotion alone to dictate her actions. She had learned too much about the strength of calculated resolve in the last hours to falter now. Raiden watched her, impressed silently by the transformation. The woman who had arrived at the hospital with fear in her eyes had become a strategist, a force of determination, her calm surface masking the intensity of the storm within. Diana's fingers traced the edge of the folder, each document a piece of the puzzle she now held firmly in her hands. She began mapping her next moves silently, envisioning confrontations, legal proceedings, evidence gathering, each calculated to protect herself and her unborn child, each designed to dismantle Willie's carefully constructed facade. Her mind flicked to Willie, lying unaware in the hospital bed, bruised physically but unscathed legally, a detail she would correct. Every instinct told her that his shock and panic would be his undoing once she acted with precision. Her pulse quickened at the thought, a surge of adrenaline mingling with protective instinct, heightening her awareness and sharpening her focus. Diana shifted her stance, scanning the office, the city lights beyond the window casting shadows that mirrored the tension coiling in her chest. She imagined Willie's potential arguments, the excuses he would offer, the manipulation he might attempt, and she planned countermeasures in real time. Each thought solidified her strategy, each realization a tool she would wield with meticulous precision. Raiden's presence was steady, grounding, his voice occasionally breaking the silence with facts, reminders, or clarifications, but never intruding. Diana absorbed every word, every document, every detail, her mind a machine of strategic planning. The more she understood, the more the fire of determination ignited. She would not be a passive participant. She would not allow the betrayal to define her life or the life of her child. Every revelation hardened her resolve, each fact a step toward reclaiming control. A particular signature caught her eye. The date and the amount, subtle, yet damning, a breadcrumb in the trail of deceit. Her lips pressed together tightly as a quiet fury rose. He underestimated me. He thought I would never notice. He thought I would forgive blindly. She could almost feel the invisible hand of justice forming in her mind, each piece of evidence another lever to tip the scales in her favor. The reality of the woman's pregnancy intertwined with her own reality in a visceral twist that only deepened her clarity. She would protect her child above all, and she would ensure Willie faced consequences, legally, morally, and socially. Diana drew in a slow, deliberate breath, the cool air of the office filling her lungs, grounding her, sharpening her focus, and she allowed herself a flicker of controlled emotion, the spark of fury that would drive her actions but would not overwhelm them. She leaned forward, eyes locking onto Raiden's. "Show me every document he signed," she said, her voice low, controlled, yet carrying a fire that could not be ignored. "I'm ending him legally." Raiden's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the unwavering resolve in her tone, the precision in her command. He understood that she had reached a point where hesitation would not serve her, where calculated action was the only path forward. The weight of the folder seemed lighter in her hands now, infused with purpose, transformed from evidence into a weapon of justice and protection. Diana's mind began a rapid calculation of steps, gathering proof, documenting every discrepancy, ensuring no loophole could protect Willie from the consequences of his long-term deceit. She considered potential allies, legal counsel, and the precise timing of each maneuver. Each plan layered upon the next, building a fortress of strategy around herself and the child she carried. The realization struck her like a surge of electric clarity. Humiliation could be transformed into power, betrayal into a tool, deception into leverage. She was no longer merely reacting. She was commanding, orchestrating, and preparing to reclaim what had been stolen. The stakes crystallized in her mind. Willie's betrayal was complete, audacious, and public, yet the control now rested in her hands. The room seemed to hum with the tension of her emerging plan, a quiet energy that drew Raiden's attention and respect. The unfolding strategy, the cold clarity in Diana's eyes, and the quiet intensity of her presence created a palpable force, one that would reshape the trajectory of every life involved. Yet even as clarity settled, a tension lingered. The depth of deceit was not yet fully known, the potential ramifications of her actions still uncertain, and the unspoken threat of further surprises hovered in the air. The fire in her gaze was unwavering, a beacon of determination that would not be dimmed by shock, betrayal, or fear. Diana was ready. She would dismantle Willie, piece by piece, legally, morally, and strategically, securing her life and the life of her unborn child. And in that charged, tense moment, with the city lights casting long shadows across the office walls, she whispered under her breath the words a promise and a threat, a declaration of power and intent. "Show me everything. I will leave nothing untouched. I will end him." The air in the office seemed to still, the weight of her resolve pressing against every corner, every surface, leaving nothing unaffected. The documents, the evidence, the truths yet uncovered, all awaited her scrutiny, and she would meet each one with the precision and fire that had become her trademark. And as Raiden handed over the next folder, her mind raced ahead, calculating, planning, preparing for the first decisive strike in a battle she would not lose. The office was silent except for the faint shuffle of papers and the soft hum of the air conditioning, a quiet backdrop to the storm raging in Diana's mind. The folders of evidence lay before her, stacked like towers of betrayal, each document heavier than the last with the truth of Willie's deception. She opened the first one, scanning each page with meticulous attention, her eyes absorbing every number, every signature, every transfer, as if they were pieces of a map leading to justice. The hotel bills alone were staggering, hidden stays and lavish rooms that bore witness to Willie's audacity. Each expense, each withdrawal, each secret transaction was a dagger pointing straight at the heart of her former life, yet instead of weakening her, it strengthened the armor of resolve she had painstakingly built. Diana's hands, once trembling with disbelief and grief, now held the papers with an unshakable steadiness, her fingers tracing the numbers like a strategist mapping out the enemy's battlefield. Her mind raced, connecting each transfer to the corresponding lie, every unauthorized expense to the nights Willie had spent deceiving her. The depth of his betrayal was breathtaking, yet she refused to allow despair to touch her. Instead, each revelation sparked a fire of clarity, fueling a determination that had replaced the grief, the confusion, and the heartbreak she had felt before. Raiden watched her quietly, a respectful distance away, understanding that this was her battlefield, and she commanded it with precision. The admiration in his eyes was subtle, but Diana could feel it, a quiet acknowledgement of the woman she had become, composed, strategic, and ruthlessly intelligent. "Diana," he said softly, breaking the silence, "every piece of this, it's worse than I expected." She did not glance up, her focus unwavering. "I've expected worse. I need everything, Raiden. No shortcuts, no omissions. If I'm going to end this, I'm ending it completely." Her mind began to outline her strategy with chilling clarity. Divorce terms needed to be precise, meticulous, and ironclad. She envisioned each asset, each property, each account, each business share, her rightful claims, her leverage. Every detail mattered, nothing could be left to chance. She drafted the terms with exacting precision, her pen moving swiftly yet deliberately across the pages. She requested full ownership of their home, every vehicle, the entirety of their savings, and her rightful shares of the businesses that Willie had so carelessly taken for granted. Each line she wrote was a declaration, a reclamation, a firm statement that the woman he had underestimated was now in command. Raiden watched her work, impressed not only by the speed of her transition from victim to strategist, but by the calm authority that now radiated from her. Gone was the trembling, the uncertainty, the anguish of the past hours. In its place stood a woman whose mind had crystallized into sharp focus, a force that would not be diverted by excuses, pleas, or manipulation. Diana's hands no longer shook as she signed the documents, her signature final, deliberate, a physical manifestation of the control she had seized over her life. Each stroke of the pen was both catharsis and strategy, a reclaiming of power that had been stolen by deceit and betrayal. She reviewed the papers one last time, ensuring that no loophole, no oversight, no opportunity for Willie to contest or delay remained. The weight of the action was real, yet she felt light with clarity and purpose, as if each signature had lifted a portion of the burden that had plagued her since the night everything shattered. Her mind flicked briefly to Willie, lying in the hospital, helpless and desperate. She imagined him calling out, trying to manipulate, pleading for forgiveness, attempting to weave lies that might soften her resolve. But Diana remained unmoved. Her focus was sharp, her intentions clear, and her heart had hardened in the crucible of betrayal. She was no longer the woman who had turned a blind eye to deception, no longer the wife who might forgive indiscriminately, no longer bound by fear of loss or shame. This was no longer a man's world. This was her battlefield, and she commanded it with intelligence, precision, and an unyielding will. Her thoughts turned to the small victories she had already achieved. The uncovering of hidden accounts, the cataloguing of lies, the meticulous gathering of evidence. Yet Diana knew that the ultimate act of reclaiming her life was still at hand. She gathered the divorce documents carefully, stacking them with deliberate care, aware of the symbolic and practical power they represented. These papers were more than legal instruments. They were a declaration of autonomy, a shield for her child, and a sword against the man who had sought to dismantle her world. The walk to the hospital room was quiet, the city lights outside casting long, shifting shadows across the floor. Diana's mind remained focused, rehearsing every word, every movement, every reaction she would allow Willie to witness. She did not allow anticipation or doubt to distract her. Instead, she harnessed the tension, channeling it into a disciplined precision that kept her steps measured and her expression calm. Each corridor seemed to pulse with anticipation, the air thick with the sense of confrontation to come. When she reached the hospital room, Willie's eyes widened at the sight of her approach. Panic flashed across his face, fleeting yet undeniable, and he opened his mouth to speak, to plead, to explain. But Diana's gaze stopped him cold. She did not speak immediately. Her silence was deliberate, heavy, a warning, a command that he would only hear when she chose to let him. His desperation hung in the air, a tangible force that could not pierce the armor of resolve she now carried. Diana stepped forward deliberately, her movements precise, her posture unwavering. She reached the bars of the hospital bed, the documents in her hands now, instruments of justice, symbols of the reclaiming of her life. Willie's voice broke again, faltering, raw with panic. "Diana, please. She slid the documents through the bars with a steady hand, her eyes locked on his, unflinching, unreadable, a calm storm of authority. The paper landed on his lap, an irrevocable mark of her strength, and the room seemed to hold its breath as the weight of her action settled. Willie's shock was palpable, his hand trembling as it hovered over the papers, the enormity of what had just occurred sinking in. Diana's voice was calm, precise, and deadly in its clarity. "You earned this," she said firmly, her words slicing through the tension, a declaration of both justice and finality. The simplicity of the statement belied the months of calculation, the depth of betrayal uncovered, and the intensity of the emotions that fueled her every action. Raiden, standing quietly to the side, observed her with a subtle pride, understanding the precision, intelligence, and courage it took to enact such a plan with absolute control. He knew that this moment marked not just the reclaiming of assets, but the reclamation of Diana herself, her dignity, her autonomy, and her power. Willie's panic escalated, a mix of disbelief and fear flashing across his face as the papers before him represented a complete dismantling of everything he had assumed to control. His eyes darted between Diana and the documents, desperation thick in his voice, yet he found no leverage, no excuses, no path forward. Every attempt to manipulate, to explain, to plead, was swallowed by the absolute finality of Diana's presence and her calculated action. The hospital room, once a place of vulnerability, became the stage for a transformation. Diana's calm intensity radiated like fire restrained, a force of nature impossible to ignore. Each movement she made, each breath, each glance, carried the weight of determination, precision, and strategic power. Even as Willie's voice cracked with pleas, Diana's mind remained focused on the next steps, the meticulous planning that would ensure no further surprises, no chance for deceit to regain foothold. She imagined future legal maneuvers, securing her child's future, protecting her autonomy, and dismantling the facade Willie had maintained for months. Raiden's subtle nod reminded her that she was not alone, that she had allies who recognized her intelligence and her courage. The realization of control, of dominance over the chaos that had once threatened to consume her, surged through her like electricity, steadying her, sharpening her awareness, and reinforcing her resolve. The tension in the room was palpable, the anticipation of Willie's reaction slicing through the quiet hum of medical equipment. Diana's gaze never wavered. Her calm, controlled demeanor was a testament to the strength she had forged in the crucible of betrayal. And as she stood there, sliding the final divorce papers through the bars, her voice cutting through the suffocating tension, the words lingered like a verdict, an unassailable declaration. "You earned this." The echo of those words seemed to ripple through the room, a declaration not just to Willie, but to the world. The era of her vulnerability was over, and the era of her calculated, unwavering strength had begun. 5. The moment Willie's eyes fell upon the divorce papers, his entire demeanor shifted. Shock registered first. A pale, vacant look, as if he were seeing something incomprehensible. A nightmare made tangible before him. He blinked rapidly, his gaze darting between the pages and Diana, as though hoping this was a cruel illusion that would vanish the moment he looked away. But it wasn't. The papers were real, meticulously drafted, each clause a precise declaration of his losses, each line a testament to Diana's unwavering resolve. "Diana! No, wait! You can't!" he stammered, voice cracking with disbelief and panic. He rose slightly, his shaking hands hovering over the stack, as if his mere touch could erase what was written. But Diana did not flinch. She stood tall, her back straight, her expression controlled, an unyielding calm radiating from every fiber of her being. This was not the wife who had trembled at his reckless behavior weeks ago. This was a woman tempered by betrayal, sharpened by indignation, and fortified by determination. Willie's voice escalated, alternating between desperate pleading and frantic shouts. "Please, listen to me! You don't understand! I can explain!" His words fell like empty echoes against the wall of Diana's composure. She had heard enough explanations, endured enough lies, and witnessed enough deception to know that this time there would be no mercy. Each plea only reinforced the clarity of her purpose. She would not allow him near her life, her child, or the future she was now meticulously reconstructing. Her gaze swept across the room with quiet authority, assessing the situation, calculating the next move. The officers nearby remained professional yet alert, sensing the tension, recognizing the absolute control Diana wielded in this moment. One officer stepped closer, subtly reinforcing the boundary between Willie and the woman who would no longer tolerate deceit. His presence was silent, but it carried weight, a reinforcement of the authority that Diana had claimed for herself. Willie's panic escalated further. "Diana, think about the baby. Think about what you're doing. You can't leave me." His voice cracked, almost breaking under the weight of his desperation. But Diana's resolve did not waver. Her mind, sharp and precise, countered each emotional manipulation with rational clarity. "He betrayed me. He lied. He hid an entire life from me. There will be no forgiveness for this. I will not risk my child's future for his selfish whims." Raiden remained by her side, steady and composed, an unspoken pillar of support. His presence was quiet, protective, and unwavering, a buffer between Diana and the chaos unleashed by Willie's unraveling. Diana's eyes briefly met his, a subtle acknowledgement of gratitude, a recognition of the strength his support provided without overshadowing her own command of the moment. The shouting continued, a cacophony of disbelief and frustration. Willie's words became more erratic, pleading interspersed with accusations, attempts to shift blame, and desperate bargaining. Each failed attempt only reinforced the absolute necessity of her next actions. Diana's breathing remained measured, her pulse steady, each heartbeat a drumbeat of unyielding determination. She would not falter, she would not hesitate, she would not allow him a foothold in her new reality. The officers moved with quiet precision, gently guiding Willie toward the exit, their hands firm but not aggressive, a clear signal that the law now supported Diana's reclaimed authority. He resisted at first, flailing, shouting and begging, but the combination of legal documentation, authoritative presence, and Diana's unwavering composure left him powerless. Step by step they escorted him away, his voice fading into the corridors as his control over the situation disintegrated entirely. Diana watched, her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths, feeling a strange mix of vindication and release. Each step Willie took away from her and her child symbolized not just a physical removal, but an emotional and strategic victory she had carefully orchestrated. She was reclaiming not only her life, but the peace, safety, and autonomy that had been stolen by his betrayal. As the door closed behind Willie, silence settled over the station, punctuated only by the soft shuffle of papers and the distant hum of the building. Diana allowed herself a brief moment to exhale, the tension releasing slightly, but leaving a lingering vigilance. Her baby stirred gently within her, a reminder of the ultimate responsibility and priority she carried: protection, nurturing, and the creation of a future free from deception. Raiden stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You've done it," he said softly, his tone acknowledging both her victory and the magnitude of the emotional toll. Diana nodded, a faint, measured smile touching her lips, but her eyes remained sharp, scanning the environment, aware that while this battle was won, the war might still have unseen skirmishes. She collected herself, straightening her coat, adjusting her posture, each movement deliberate, precise, an unspoken message that she was calm, collected, and in full command of her life. The station staff, who had observed the scene with curiosity and caution, seemed to recognize the shift, the transformation of a woman from betrayed to sovereign, her composure radiating authority and quiet dominance. As they walked toward the exit, Diana's mind continued to process the implications of the day. Every betrayal she had endured, every deception uncovered, every act of manipulation was now a tool, a piece of evidence, a weapon in her broader strategy to secure her life and the life of her child. The realization that she was free, that the control Willie had exerted for so long was now irretrievably gone, sparked a surge of empowerment that was both intoxicating and precise. Outside the station, the cool night air washed over her, crisp and clarifying. The city lights reflected in the windows, illuminating her determined expression as she took measured steps, each one symbolizing the reclaiming of autonomy and authority she had meticulously constructed. Raiden remained beside her, protective yet unobtrusive, a steady presence that complemented her newfound independence. The thought of the life she was about to reclaim, one built on strategy, vigilance, and autonomy, surged within her. Every luxury Willie had flaunted, every privilege he had assumed to control, every material and emotional possession he had taken for granted was now rightfully hers. But Diana understood that true freedom extended beyond material possessions. It was the unshakable control of her choices, the sovereignty over her emotions, and the security of her child's future. As they moved through the quiet streets, her mind remained alert. The city, with its shadows and lights, reflected her own duality. Calm exterior masking the inner fire of strategy, vigilance, and empowerment. She was free, yet she knew the path ahead demanded continued precision, calculated action, and unwavering awareness. Later that night, back in the privacy of her apartment, Diana sat quietly, the weight of the day's triumphs pressing gently against her consciousness. The baby stirred once more, tiny movements that reminded her of the stakes, the future she must protect, and the strength she must maintain. She allowed herself a moment to feel the quiet satisfaction of victory, a small, measured acknowledgement of her own power and clarity. Her thoughts, however, were interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Diana's heart skipped a beat, her instincts immediately alert. She rose cautiously, every sense heightened, her mind racing through possibilities. Raiden's voice followed shortly after, steady and calm. "Diana, it's me," he said. The tension eased slightly, though vigilance remained. She opened the door, and his presence immediately brought a sense of safety tempered with urgency. In his hands were more documents, thicker and more daunting than any before. His expression was grave, yet controlled. "You are not safe yet," he said quietly, the weight of the words pressing against the quiet of the apartment. "There's more coming." Diana's breath hitched briefly, anticipation and resolve coiling within her like a spring ready to release. She knew instinctively that the battle was far from over, that each victory today might be the precursor to challenges that demanded even sharper strategy, fiercer determination, and unwavering vigilance. She took a deliberate breath, steadying herself, feeling the familiar spark of fire igniting within. Her gaze met Raiden's, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Strategy, courage, precision, vigilance, these would guide them forward. And as the night deepened, the quiet hum of the city outside became the backdrop to a woman who had reclaimed her life, yet remained prepared, watchful, and unyielding. The night had settled over the city, a quiet contrast to the chaos that had defined Diana's recent days. The apartment was calm, the soft hum of the heater mingling with the occasional distant sounds of traffic, yet the tension in the air was palpable. Diana sat on the couch, the thick stack of documents Raiden had brought earlier resting on the table before her, each page a testament to the ongoing legal storm surrounding Willie. Her fingers traced the edges of the papers, not out of hesitation, but as if connecting herself to the tangible proof of justice she was about to wield. Each document represented another layer of accountability, another piece of the puzzle that would dismantle the man who had sought to ruin her life. Raiden sat beside her, close enough to offer silent support, yet maintaining a professional distance, his eyes scanning the papers with quiet intensity. "Diana," he began, voice low and controlled, "I've gone through everything. And with the mistress confessions, the charges against Willie have been extended significantly. He's looking at serious consequences beyond what you've already seen." His words were precise, but the weight behind them was not lost on Diana. She absorbed the information with her usual calm, her mind already calculating the implications, the next moves, the safeguards she needed to implement. She exhaled slowly, a controlled release of tension that had been coiled tightly within her for days. "So, this isn't just about divorce," she murmured, eyes never leaving the papers. "This is about ensuring he can't come back into our lives, not now, not ever. I need every angle covered, every loophole closed." Her voice was steady, authoritative, a reflection of the woman she had become, a strategist forged in the crucible of betrayal. Raiden nodded, impressed by her foresight. "Exactly. Every document, every testimony, every financial record, it's all being used to ensure your safety, the baby's safety, and to hold him accountable. Nothing is being left to chance." As they discussed the details of the ongoing legal proceedings, a sudden sharp kick from within Diana's womb interrupted the conversation. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, feeling the small yet undeniable movement. A smile, fleeting but genuine, touched her lips. The baby's presence was a reminder of the future she was fighting for, of the life she was protecting with every measured action. Without a word, Raiden instinctively knelt beside her, lowering himself to her level in a gesture of respect and care. His hand hovered lightly near her abdomen, careful not to touch without permission, his eyes reflecting admiration and genuine concern. The simple, unspoken connection between them was charged with warmth, a gentle reassurance that she was not alone in the fight. Diana felt a flicker of emotions she had long buried: trust, safety, and something resembling hope. "Always so strong," Raiden said softly, almost a whisper, yet carrying an unmistakable weight. "Even now, you handle everything with such clarity, such courage." His gaze remained steady on hers, conveying not just professional respect, but something deeper, something he had kept contained for a long time. Diana's heart skipped slightly, the acknowledgement of her strength stirring something unexpected within her, a spark of connection she had not felt since the night her world first shattered. She drew in a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. "I've learned to survive," she said carefully, eyes still fixed on her baby's gentle movements beneath her hand. "But it's different when you're not alone." Her words were cautious, deliberate, a subtle acknowledgement of the trust she was beginning to feel in Raiden's presence. He remained kneeling, quiet, giving her space while signaling through his posture that he was there, unwavering and steadfast. "You don't have to carry this alone, Diana," he said quietly, his voice carrying a sincerity that was impossible to fabricate. "I've admired you from the start. Your courage, your determination, it's unlike anything I've ever seen." Diana's mind momentarily flickered to the path that had led her here, the betrayal, the legal battles, the strategic planning, the careful reclaiming of her life. Every step had been measured, every action calculated, yet in this moment, a new variable had entered her life. Raiden's presence was no longer purely professional. It carried a silent promise of protection, of loyalty, and of an unspoken affection that she had once thought impossible to feel again. Her eyes met his, searching, questioning, yet also assessing. She was a woman who had been trained to scrutinize, to evaluate motives, to predict actions. And yet, in Raiden's gaze, she found an honesty that she could not easily dismiss. The weight of unspoken words hung between them, a tension that was both comforting and electrifying. The baby kicked again, gently but insistently, a small reminder that her life, her focus, and her responsibilities extended beyond her own experiences. Raiden's hand moved subtly, hovering close to her abdomen, as if offering silent acknowledgement and respect for the life growing within her. Diana felt the warmth of his attention, a rare and tender energy that contrasted sharply with the cold, calculated chaos of the past weeks. She leaned back slightly, exhaling slowly, allowing herself a brief moment of reflection. The world outside was still uncertain, filled with legal battles, betrayals, and the lingering shadows of Willie's actions. But here, in this quiet apartment, in this small yet profound moment, she felt a connection she had thought forever lost, a feeling of being seen, respected, and quietly protected. Raiden's eyes softened as he continued to watch her, his posture still low, still attentive, the room between them charged with an unspoken understanding. "You're incredible, Diana," he said quietly, almost reverently. "I've never met anyone like you, and I want to be here for you, not just professionally, but personally. I want to protect you, to stand by you." Diana's chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, her mind racing yet centered. The fire of determination still burned brightly within her, tempered by the rare, careful spark of trust she was beginning to allow. Her hand rested lightly on her belly, a grounding touch, a connection to the life that represented both her future and the stakes of every decision she had made. She allowed herself a moment to observe Raiden, to weigh his presence, to consider the sincerity behind his words. The strategic part of her mind assessed the risk, the authenticity, the potential outcomes. Yet beneath the layers of calculation, a soft, vulnerable part of her heart stirred, a part that had been dormant through months of pain, betrayal, and careful planning. Raiden shifted slightly, his voice dropping even lower, almost a whisper meant only for her. "Diana, when this is over, I want to ask you something important." The words hung in the air, charged with anticipation and the weight of unspoken promise. Diana's heart skipped, a sudden jolt of curiosity and cautious hope intertwining with her ever-present vigilance. She didn't respond immediately, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity, assessing, questioning, yet unable to deny the faint thrill of possibility. Her mind briefly flashed to the battles yet to come. Legal maneuvers, Willie's potential retaliation, the safeguarding of her child, and the careful orchestration of every step to ensure autonomy and security. Yet even amidst the storm of strategy, a tiny seed of trust, of hope, and of personal connection had taken root. The baby kicked once more, rhythmic and insistent, a living heartbeat that tied Diana's focus to both the present and the future. Raiden's hand instinctively hovered near hers, a protective shadow, a silent pledge of loyalty and care. The room, though quiet, was thick with tension, anticipation, and the weight of the unspoken question lingering between them. Diana inhaled deeply, centering herself, feeling the familiar fire of resilience, strengthened now by the rare warmth of trust and the promise of protection. She had reclaimed her life with precision, strategy, and courage, and yet here, in the quiet of the night, she felt the subtle shift of something more, the possibility of connection, care, and even love, tempered by the knowledge that the fight was far from over. Raiden's gaze remained fixed on her, unwavering, patient, and protective, the kind of steadfast presence that demanded trust, yet earned it quietly. The words he had whispered lingered in her mind, a quiet tension waiting to be resolved, a promise of potential beyond strategy and survival. The night stretched on, the city outside fading into a soft hum of distant lights and muted traffic. Diana and Raiden sat together, a fragile yet growing bond forming, a blend of respect, admiration, and unspoken feelings carefully navigating the space between them. The documents on the table, the baby's gentle movements, and the quiet hum of the city created a tableau of anticipation, strategy, and emotional awakening. And as the night deepened, the silent acknowledgement of connection, trust, and possibility between them remained, a quiet yet potent force shaping the future even as the battles of the present raged on. The months that followed were a blur of preparation, anticipation, and quiet vigilance. Diana navigated each day with meticulous care, balancing the demands of her recovering body, the ongoing legal proceedings against Willie, and the growing awareness of the tiny life moving within her. Each morning she awoke with a sense of purpose sharper than any she had known before. The world around her seemed simultaneously vast and intimate, every detail infused with the weight of responsibility and the promise of a future she was now shaping with her own hands. Raiden's presence was constant, a quiet but unwavering support that had grown into something more profound than mere professional obligation. He accompanied her to medical appointments, stood patiently by during consultations, and listened with keen attention whenever she voiced concerns or fears. His calm demeanor, steady hands, and attentive gaze had become an anchor in a world that had once felt precarious and unstable. Diana, despite her natural tendency to shoulder burdens alone, found herself leaning ever so slightly into that steady support, acknowledging a trust she had thought impossible to feel again. The day she went into labor arrived quietly, with the early morning sun spilling faint gold across her bedroom. A sharp contraction gripped her abdomen, reminding her with sudden intensity that the moment she had anticipated for months was finally here. She inhaled, focusing on her breath, as the rhythmic pain surged and ebbed. Raiden was instantly by her side, his hand supporting hers, guiding her through the first waves of labor with quiet words of encouragement. "You're incredible, Diana," he said gently, his voice carrying a warmth and calm authority that steadied her nerves. "You've prepared for this, you're strong, and I'm right here with you." The words were simple, yet in them was a depth of sincerity and admiration that reached her core. Diana gritted her teeth against the next contraction, feeling both the pain and the determination coiling together into an unshakable resolve. Hours passed in a haze of focused intensity, each contraction more demanding than the last, each breath a negotiation between body, mind, and the life about to enter the world. Raiden's presence never wavered. He held her hand firmly but gently, whispered encouragements, and adjusted blankets or pillows as needed. His eyes reflected a careful attentiveness, a silent communication that he understood both her strength and her vulnerability. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the baby cried, a sound that pierced the haze of exhaustion with astonishing clarity. Diana's eyes filled with tears, the sound triggering an emotional release she had long suppressed. Raiden's reaction mirrored her own. She noticed the subtle quiver in his shoulders, the moisture glistening in his eyes. The man who had been a pillar of support, steadfast through betrayal and uncertainty, now showed a tenderness that confirmed the depth of his sincerity. He lifted the baby carefully, cradling him with reverent precision. His eyes met Diana's, and in that gaze was a silent promise: protection, care, and unwavering presence. The world outside ceased to matter in that moment. The chaos of betrayal, the shadow of Willie, the uncertainty of legal battles, all of it faded into insignificance against the quiet intensity of this new life and the man who had stood unwavering beside her. Diana reached out, tentatively, her hand brushing against the baby's small form. A smile broke across her lips, the first pure expression of joy she had allowed herself in months. "He's perfect," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "He's ours." Raiden's lips curved into a soft, genuine smile, his hands steady as he held the child. "Yes," he said softly, "and he has the best mother he could ever have." As days turned into weeks, Diana settled into a rhythm of motherhood, legal strategy, and careful rebuilding of her life. Each day brought new challenges: sleepless nights, documents to review, phone calls to handle, but also tiny moments of joy, a soft coo from the baby, the first smile, the gentle touch of his tiny hand against hers. Through it all, Raiden remained present, never imposing, always observing, assisting, and protecting. His subtle gestures, a hand on her back during a difficult day, a quiet word of encouragement, a cup of tea prepared without being asked, became a tapestry of care that wove its way into Diana's consciousness, unspoken but profoundly felt. One quiet evening, months after the birth, Diana and Raiden sat together in the nursery. The baby lay peacefully in a bassinet, eyes half closed, breathing softly. Diana's hands rested lightly on the edge of the crib, fingers brushing against the small blanket, a reflective calm settling over her. She looked up at Raiden, noticing the gentle curve of his expression, the way his eyes softened as he watched her, the unspoken care that permeated every gesture. He moved closer, kneeling on one knee before her, a deliberate and symbolic act that took her breath away. In his arms, he held the baby carefully, gazing down at the child with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the calculated precision he displayed in professional matters. The juxtaposition was striking. The man who had been unwavering in strategic matters now revealed a depth of emotional vulnerability and genuine affection that Diana had longed to witness. "Diana," he began, voice low and steady, carrying an intensity that commanded her full attention. "I've stood by you through everything. The betrayal, the legal battles, the chaos. I've admired your strength, your courage, and the way you've fought not just for yourself, but for him, for your child." His gaze met hers, unwavering, filled with a sincerity that was impossible to question. Diana's chest rose and fell with measured breaths, her mind briefly racing through the past months, every step, every struggle, every moment of doubt and strategy. And yet, here, in this quiet, intensely intimate moment, all calculations seemed secondary. Her heart, long fortified against deception and disappointment, felt the faint stirrings of trust, warmth, and hope. Raiden shifted slightly, adjusting the baby in his arms to ensure comfort and security. Then, with deliberate care, he extended his hand toward Diana, a gesture of both invitation and commitment. "I want to be part of your life, permanently, not just as support, not just as protector, but as someone who loves you and will always stand by you, no matter what." The words resonated deeply, reverberating against walls of pain, resilience, and hope that Diana had carefully constructed. She felt the weight of possibility pressing gently against her, an invitation to embrace trust, connection, and perhaps even love. Her gaze softened, the steel in her eyes mingling with a flicker of vulnerability she rarely allowed herself to show. She allowed herself a small, tentative step forward, placing her hand lightly on his. The warmth of his hand, the quiet strength of his presence, and the evident sincerity of his emotions created a connection that was immediate, tangible, and profound. Diana realized with quiet clarity that the man before her, who had fought alongside her, respected her autonomy, and shown unwavering care, embodied the qualities she had long sought: respect, loyalty, and genuine love. Tears threatened to spill over as Diana processed the depth of the moment. She had endured betrayal, reclaimed her life, and emerged stronger than she had ever imagined. And now, she faced the possibility of a new life, built on truth, care, and shared responsibility. Her heart, long guarded, began to open, recognizing that real love was not merely passion or desire, it was protection, respect, loyalty, and consistent presence. Raiden's voice broke the quiet reflection, soft but deliberate. "Diana, will you marry me?" The words hung in the air, potent with expectation, anticipation, and unspoken promise. Diana's breath caught, her hand tightening around his for a moment before she released a measured exhale. The tiny stirrings of the baby beneath her touch mirrored the fluttering of her own heart, a gentle reminder that life, love, and new beginnings were intertwined. For the first time in months, Diana allowed herself to smile fully, a mixture of relief, trust, gratitude, and tentative hope. The pain of betrayal, the battles fought, the sleepless nights and careful strategies, all of it had led to this moment. And as she gazed into Raiden's eyes, seeing the unwavering sincerity, the care, and the unspoken devotion, she knew that this was the love she had been waiting for. A love built on truth, respect, and unwavering loyalty. "Yes," she whispered, voice steady but infused with emotion, "I will marry you." The relief and joy in Raiden's expression was immediate, yet tempered by the quiet understanding of responsibility that came with this promise. He lifted the baby carefully, holding both mother and child in a moment that symbolized trust, protection, and the beginnings of a new life. The apartment, once a place of quiet tension and vigilance, now felt alive with possibility, warmth, and the gentle promise of a future forged together. Diana's heart swelled with gratitude and trust, knowing that she had finally found someone who matched her strength, respected her autonomy, and offered the unwavering loyalty and care she had deserved all along. The journey had been long, painful, and filled with uncertainty. But here, in the quiet intimacy of love built on truth. She allowed herself to hope, to feel, and to embrace the life she had fought so hard to claim. 8. The sun rose gently over the horizon on the day that would mark a new chapter in Diana's life. Soft golden light filtered through the windows, bathing the room in a warm glow that mirrored the quiet joy within her heart. The apartment, usually filled with the hum of distant traffic and subtle city noises, was unusually serene. Today, it seemed, the world paused to honor the moment she had long awaited. A moment not defined by betrayal or chaos, but by love, stability, and the promise of a future she had fought tirelessly to create. Diana stood in front of the full-length mirror, her hands smoothing the delicate fabric of her dress, her eyes tracing every line and fold as if absorbing the reality of the day. She felt a sense of calm certainty that had eluded her for so long, a confidence born not from vanity but from a journey that had tempered her with trials, strategy, and unwavering strength. Each breath she drew was measured, a gentle reminder of the life she now led and the love she had found. Raiden entered the room quietly, his presence immediate yet understated, the kind of presence that demanded attention not through noise but through silent assurance. His tailored suit fit perfectly, the crisp lines reflecting the precision of his character and the depth of his care for the moment. His eyes met Diana's in the mirror, a spark of admiration, tenderness, and unspoken emotion flickering between them. Without words, the connection was undeniable, a culmination of months of shared struggle, quiet understanding, and mutual respect. The small venue chosen for the ceremony was intimate, a place where sunlight danced across polished wooden floors and delicate floral arrangements filled the space with subtle fragrance. Guests were few, close friends and family who had witnessed Diana's resilience and transformation. Every detail was carefully curated, not to impress, but to create a space that reflected the love, respect, and sincerity that now defined her life. Raiden approached Diana, offering his hand with a quiet smile. She took it, feeling the steady warmth and reassurance in his grip, a stark contrast to the uncertainty and betrayal of the past. Together, they walked down the aisle side by side, a symbol of partnership, mutual trust, and a shared commitment to a future built on truth and care. Every step echoed the journey they had undertaken, from fear and betrayal to trust, love, and profound connection. As they reached the altar, Raiden lifted their son into his arms, the small child's eyes wide with curiosity and innocence. The sight struck Diana profoundly. The man who had once betrayed her, now powerless, replaced by a life filled with love, loyalty, and integrity. Her heart swelled as she realized that every sleepless night, every tear, every calculated move had led to this moment of pure authenticity and joy. The officiant spoke quietly, words flowing like a gentle current, acknowledging the resilience and love that had brought Diana and Raiden together. Diana's eyes were fixed on Raiden, tracing the lines of his face, the way his gaze softened when he looked at their son, the quiet strength in his stance. Each word spoken was a reaffirmation of everything she had fought for: autonomy, love, protection, and the ability to choose her happiness without compromise. Vows were exchanged, carefully chosen and deeply heartfelt. Diana's voice carried a quiet power, resonating with the clarity of a woman who had endured betrayal, reclaimed her life, and now fully embraced love on her terms. "I vow to stand with you, Raiden," she whispered, "through every joy, every challenge, every step of our life together. I will protect our family, nurture our love, and honor the trust we have built." Raiden's response was equally sincere, his voice steady, resonant, and unwavering. "Diana, you have shown me the strength of your heart, the courage of your spirit, and the depth of your love. I vow to protect you, cherish you, and be your steadfast partner in every moment of our lives. Together, we will build a home filled with love, trust, and unwavering support. The ceremony, though brief, was suffused with emotion. Friends and family shared in quiet smiles, gentle tears, and subtle nods of acknowledgement, all witnessing the transformation of a woman who had endured unimaginable pain and emerged unbroken, radiant, and fiercely loving. Diana's heart lifted as she felt the culmination of every struggle, every strategic choice, and every act of resilience crystallize into a moment of pure, enduring happiness. After the ceremony, Raiden held Diana's hand as they walked through the garden adjoining the venue. The baby slept peacefully in his arms, the soft rise and fall of his chest a comforting rhythm against the serene afternoon. Diana looked around, absorbing the quiet beauty of the day. The soft breeze rustling through the leaves, the delicate scent of flowers, the gentle warmth of sunlight, each element reinforcing the sense that life could indeed be beautiful after hardship. Raiden bent slightly, brushing a strand of hair from Diana's face, his eyes locking with hers. "You've earned this, Diana," he said softly, his voice a mixture of admiration, reverence, and love. "Every step of the way, you've proven that strength, resilience, and compassion can coexist. You've created a life of your own choosing, and now we share it together." Diana's eyes shimmered with emotion. She had long known what it meant to endure, to fight, to strategize, and to survive. But she had also learned the value of love that was patient, respectful, and steadfast. Looking into Raiden's eyes, she saw the man who had proven himself worthy of her trust, care, and heart. His love was consistent, tangible, and unwavering, a sharp contrast to the deceit and betrayal that had once shattered her world. As evening approached, the family settled into their new home. Raiden carefully placed the baby in Diana's arms, guiding her hands with gentle instruction, his touch both protective and tender. Diana marveled at the contrast of their present life with the chaos of the past. Nights of worry replaced by quiet evenings of warmth, vigilance replaced by trust, loneliness replaced by companionship. The journey had been arduous, but the reward was profound, a life built on truth, care, and mutual respect. Raiden prepared tea, a small, thoughtful gesture that spoke volumes about his attentiveness. He returned to Diana's side, offering the cup with a quiet smile. "For you," he said softly, "to celebrate the life you've claimed, the love you deserve, and the future we'll build together." Diana accepted the cup, her fingers brushing against his in a fleeting, intimate touch. The warmth of the tea mirrored the warmth in her chest, a combination of relief, joy, and gratitude. She realized that she had not only reclaimed her independence, but had also found a partner who elevated her, respected her, and shared her vision of family and love. Night fell, and the soft glow of lamps illuminated their home. Diana tucked the baby into the crib, each movement careful, loving, and attentive. Raiden stood nearby, observing with quiet pride and tender admiration. Every gesture he made, every glance he offered, reinforced the truth she had long awaited. This love was real, unwavering, and built on trust, not fleeting desire. As they finally sat together on the couch, the baby resting peacefully between them, Raiden reached out, brushing a gentle kiss across Diana's forehead. The touch was light but profound, carrying all the unspoken words of admiration, gratitude, and enduring love. "You were never broken, Diana," he whispered softly, his voice carrying the weight of months of trials and triumphs. "You were just waiting for the right man to love you right." Diana's eyes glistened with tears, but they were tears of fulfillment, peace, and quiet triumph. She realized that her journey had not been about surviving betrayal or seeking vengeance, though both had been necessary. It had been about claiming her own power, embracing her own strength, and ultimately allowing herself to experience the kind of love that elevated and completed her. Raiden held her close, their fingers intertwined, a subtle, constant reassurance that they would face whatever the future held together. The baby stirred gently in his arms, a tiny life embodying the promise of continuity, hope, and shared responsibility. Diana smiled, feeling a completeness she had never known before. The past, with all its pain and betrayal, had given way to a present filled with warmth, security, and unwavering love. Evenings in their home became a rhythm of tenderness, quiet dinners, soft conversations, gentle laughter, and the comforting routines of family life. Diana thrived not only as a mother but as a professional, a woman of vision, strategy, and determination who now balanced her responsibilities with joy, intimacy, and partnership. Raiden's consistent care reinforced a sense of stability, trust, and shared purpose that she had long believed unattainable. Weeks turned into months, and the home was filled with a peaceful cadence, a rhythm of nights illuminated by soft lamplight, the occasional coo or gurgle from their son, and the quiet satisfaction of two people building a life on mutual respect and enduring love. Diana's confidence had evolved beyond strategy. It was now intertwined with genuine contentment, the kind that comes from knowing one has been seen, valued, and cherished fully. Raiden continued to demonstrate love through thoughtful actions, helping with household tasks, attending appointments, and offering words of encouragement. Every small gesture reinforced the trust and intimacy they had cultivated, a constant affirmation that the life Diana had fought for was now hers, not by conquest or revenge alone, but by the deliberate construction of a safe, loving, and thriving environment. And as night descended fully, Raiden once again brushed a tender kiss across her forehead, his eyes reflecting the unwavering affection and admiration he held for her. Diana, resting her head against his shoulder, felt a profound sense of completion. She understood fully now that the trials, betrayals, and painstaking strategies of the past had not broken her. They had prepared her to embrace the kind of love, respect, and loyalty she truly deserved. In that quiet, intimate moment, the room filled with warmth, peace, and the unspoken promise of enduring happiness. Diana, Raiden, and their son formed a united front against the uncertainties of life, a testament to resilience, courage, and the transformative power of love built on truth. And as the soft glow of the night settled over them, Diana finally knew without doubt that she had arrived at the life she had always deserved, whole, cherished, and unbreakable. And that's the journey of Diana, from betrayal and heartbreak to love, strength, and the life she truly deserved. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. Subscribe to Beyond Color Stories so you never miss a tale full of suspense, drama, and unexpected love. Remember, every ending is just the beginning of another story, and we'll see you in the next one.